Greetings, opera lovers. Live from Bloomfield, Connecticut, it's Rona Sutton. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, and mainly that's because I myself am getting tired of hearing myself say the same things about so many singers, how wonderful they are, the beauty of their voices. But realistically, I go to the opera to enjoy myself, not to pick apart the performances. And I so look forward to the great singers I've heard over the years. Many times I go and the singing is not so great, and I'd prefer not to say anything about it. As a former professional singer, I know how difficult it is to be on your A game all the time. Sometimes you just wake up and it just doesn't sound as good as you would like it to. So this past Saturday, I was lucky enough to catch one of the performances of Adriana Lecouvreur at the Met. It was also the day of the HD transmission. So while I was in the theater, a few rows in front of me was one of the cameramen capturing this for the theaters all across the world. There are a few performances left as I speak, and I hope that if some of you were on the fence, this will make you want to go and see it. It was overall one of the best performances I've ever seen at the Met. Now, first, let me tell you about my relationship with this opera. Very little. I'm really not an expert on it. I did not open the score. I know, about 4 or 5 of the really famous arias. And even those arias, only really the 3 by the ladies is very, very well known to me. But let's start with a place that I'm not sure all reviews will start with, but I'd like to start with the conductor, Gianandrea Noseda. The reason I want to mention him first is because this opera, as you all know, is brought to the public because it's a great vehicle for a star soprano. And she's got to have a larger-than-life personality. And the soprano we had in this production was Anna Netrebko in all her glory. But all the singers were absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to get to them later. Well, in an opera like this, you really want the singers to sing the arias the way they want to, not so much the way the conductor has envisioned their arias falling into the general pattern of the opera. And for this, from my excellent seat, I was able to see Mr. Noseda sit up so tall in his by the podium, and when the soloists were singing, his hands were way up high so that everyone on stage could see him. I would say he achieved pretty much a perfect balance between his vision and helping the singers do their very best. He was so attentive to every nuance, every breath that they took, every note that they wanted to hold extra long, and there were several. He was just wonderful. So you never felt that there was this push and pull between the conductor and the soloist. Just to mention someone who I really admire and enjoy hearing every time I've heard him live, when Vittorio Grigolo sings, I very often feel that it's a tug of war between him and the conductor, and that was not at all the case today. So bravo to the conductor, who I had heard before, or seen before, in Pittsburgh. He's a very dynamic looking conductor from the back as we see him, and it seems like he has great enthusiasm and excitement to offer the music. So now going on, the next thing I'd like to tell you that was special about this performance was how the ensemble worked together, meaning you could either say the 3 main principals, the 4 main principals, or everybody. So between the 4 main principals, we have 4 true superstars. Besides Miss Netrebko playing the title character, we have Piotr Beczala playing the her love interest, Maurizio, And then you have the rival of Adriana, uh, the Princess de Bouillon, played by Anita Rachvelishvili. I had to practice that. And Michonnet, beautifully, beautifully played by Ambrogio Maestri. All the other smaller parts were also excellent. But what I'd like to say about these singers are two things. Number one, they all sounded like they kind of studied at the same school. Didn't sound like somebody was from the German school and somebody was from the Eastern European school and somebody from God only knows what other school, of course the Italian or French school. They all had the same kind of technique, and it worked so beautifully as an ensemble. The other thing is that I've gone to a lot of performances at the Met and many elsewhere. Very often, they blow the budget on the big singers, and then for the smaller roles, like you wonder, how did they get these great singers to sing the leads, and then these really subpar singers for the secondary roles, many roles which you think university students could sing. Of course, not at the Met, because you need a very, very large and finished voice to carry in the Met. But this past Saturday, all the voices were of the highest quality. And there was one other thing that I so appreciated, and that was the lack of overuse of vibrato going into almost a tremolo. So many times in the past, I've heard singers who get into some kind of vocal distress and their vibrato is so wide that it is distressing. It's happened to me on probably more than half of the performances I've attended. So bravo to all of the lead singers. And this really was a memorable performance because of the overall quality of the singing. Then I'd like to mention each singer individually and how special they were, because they really were. Now, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've already read the New York Times, maybe the Observer, something on Parterre, your friends who have blogs. But these are my special thoughts about the singers. First, we have to talk about Anna Netrebko, who plays Adriana Lecouvreur. From the moment we see her on stage, where we just see her either in profile or her back, she is an absolute glamour diva, and she sold that role to the nines. Also, her voice was extremely beautiful. She has amazing control. And the fact that she's been singing at the Met for so long and in so many starring roles, she has the confidence to sing in such a way that the audience is just waiting for her next note. She's able to hold the audience in the palm of her hand. The next singer, of course, is my beloved Piotr Beczala singing Maurizio. So I've heard him now live over the last many years, maybe 5 or 6 years. And you know what? This guy just gets better and better. And I don't know how that's possible, since when I first heard him, I believe it was in Faust, he was already great. But yet, he's just so reliable. That's another thing. When you go to an opera and he's listed as the tenor, or the starring role, you don't worry about, the high note's going to be there. They're there, and so is everything else. And then I have a little kind of a pet thing that I just love about him, and that is I love to watch how he forms his words, especially the vowels, with his mouth and lip position. It's just really beautiful. And even though I didn't use my binoculars, from row P, I could see that beautifully. In fact, all the singers had excellent mouth positions. Not that they care what I think. And so then we get to the great Anita Rachvelishvili. I first heard her live streamed, I believe it was live streamed, or maybe it was after, from La Scala as Carmen. Fabulous. Then kind of watched her career grow, watched her voice grow, or listened to her voice grow. I wasn't sure exactly where it was going until last season when she was in Il Trovatore. Oh my God, she stole the show as Azucena. And here again, she's given a great role to really showcase her vocal gifts and her hard work, because you don't get to where she is without really hard work. And last but not least, I must just confess my overall love for Ambrogio Maestri, who sang Michonnet. Such a loving portrait of a person in love, hopelessly in love with the beautiful Adriana, and it's just never going to happen for him. He's heartbreakingly beautiful, and he sings in a real bel canto style. I've seen him as Falstaff a few times. It's not an opera I like. Okay, throw tomatoes right now. But yet he always impresses me in that role. So that's it for the singing. And then there are just a few other words I'd like to say about the production. The staging and the scenery, well, they didn't harm anything, and it wasn't anything brilliant, thank God. It was just a beautiful representation of the time, of a romantic view of the age. Everything worked beautifully. I have to point out the costumes. They were stupendous. They were just over the top glorious. And so Mr. Opera and I thoroughly enjoyed the opera, as did everybody in the Met audience. A very special thing happened at the end of the performance. Just Miss Netrebko came out for a solo bow. Everybody stood up. It was so spontaneous, and she was truly moved. I think she's moved by the portrayal of this tragic character. So a great afternoon. I just had the best time, and I look forward to my next opera at the Met, Carmen, in just a few weeks. Confession, this is going to be my first live Carmen. I don't know how that happened this late in my life, but I think that's because I've seen so many Madame Butterflies that the companies that where I live, that's what they were playing. So hope you all enjoyed this. Write comments on the bottom of the blog. Mwah! Bye, everyone.